Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this event. My name is Brent Klavon, and I am the Vice President for the Association of Unmanned Vehicle Systems International, Florida Peninsula chapter. And in Florida, we have two chapters. Our sister chapter is the Emerald Coast, and along with them and our board members and chapter members, we welcome you to this event. Thank you for coming this morning. And we want to also say a debt of thanks and gratitude to our speakers and panelists that were kind enough to spend time with us over the next 2 days. And if you were to look back into the calendar just several months ago, if you had to pick a date on the calendar, you could not have asked for a better time to conduct an event like this. If you're following the news of late, you will recall that the FAA has recently released some information that has us all very excited and interested in the future of unmanned systems. And you'll hear much of that discussion over the next 2 days. And so we're very thankful that you are here this morning, and we welcome you, and I would like to now turn it over to our conference host. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rob Morgan with UAS Business Solutions. I'd like to welcome everybody for coming to the event here. Couple basic items here. Bathrooms out the hallway here, down. You got men's on the left, women's on the right. If there's emergency, exit signs, all that kind of good stuff there. Just like to thank everybody for coming and participating in this event. We saw a need in bringing technology out to the marketplace here. Obviously, we're working through a lot of issues, and that's why everyone came here to find some solutions to that. So it's meant to be a big networking expo where we can find solutions and figure things out. We've got a bunch of the sponsors off on the side here. Feel free to talk to people, network, and go over there. We ask that while you're in the room here, that you keep it quiet for the speaker, give them your full attention, and pay attention to what they're talking about at the time there. We appreciate your respect for others in that regard there. So that's about all I had for right now. I'd like to introduce Grant Begley, who will be our first host here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rob. Grant Begley with the Association of Unmanned Vehicle Systems also, and I am absolutely honored and delighted to be here with you today as a participant and a contributor to the underway global unmanned aircraft systems revolution and the great capabilities that it brings to Florida's economy and the quality of life of Floridians. This event was established today by Floridians, for Floridians, for the benefit of Florida. And so in our presentation today, you will see three themes. One is revolution, and so it's going to be up to you to decide whether the revolution is underway or not, and at the end of the event, if you don't think so, please come talk with me. Number two, is it important to Florida? And you'll hear from the presenters today that are Florida-grown entrepreneurs, academia, and politicians that in fact this underway revolution is important to Florida. And you as individuals, you get three choices. You can stand on the sideline and be irrelevant to the revolution. You can be a spectator, or you can be a participant. And so I'm delighted that you're here today because I already assessed that you're a participant. So it's my honor to be here with leaders, with friends, and with innovation thinkers to discuss this opportunity for Florida. And so with that, we are going to have our opening keynote speaker is the leader for the advancement of unmanned aircraft systems for Florida. And it's my delight to introduce Jim Kuzma. Jim Kuzma is the Senior Vice President for Space Florida. He's their Chief Operating Officer. Jim is a Naval Academy graduate, nuclear submarine background, commanding officer, ran bases, naval bases, submarine bases, distinguished naval career that include, even given his submarine background, leading the discussion and the capabilities of national security from space assets to high atmospheric assets that include unmanned aircraft systems. Jim stepped out of the active duty role in 2012, I do believe it was, Jim, and also had the distinguished of being awarded the Legion of Merit and the Bronze Star for his naval service, and so very noteworthy. Jim was highly recruited and accepted the position to be the COO for Space Florida, And there could not have been a better person because of Jim's experience of working diverse organizational challenges, leading edge technologies, and advancing business growth. Space Florida has the responsibility of growing the aerospace industry in Florida to include spaceport, technologies, leveraging the facilities of NASA and other activities across the state of Florida. And Jim has done a superb job at that, and I'm delighted to introduce Jim, have him be your welcoming speaker and keynote speaker this morning. So please join me in getting Jim up here. And Jim.
Thanks, Grant. Hey, before you go anywhere. Hey, as Grant said, I'm Jim Kuzma, extremely humbled to be here, and the first thing I'd like to do is recognize a couple people who helped me during the demo that we did. And one thing that makes everything we do human and personal is I actually have a T-shirt from the demo that I'd like you to give to Joe Brandon, because I didn't see Joe here today, right? But Joe is going to be working the event, but he also has a grandchild that has some significant medical issues. So, Grant, if you would do me a favor and pass on that to Joe for my appreciation for that out of group. Well, welcome, right? And the first thing I would say is I'm extremely humbled to be here. The guys that I see around here who are friends and workers, people who I've met in meetings, it's extremely humbling because the experts in the field of robotics and unmanned systems are sitting before me. It's not me. You know, Grant, thank you for that introduction. The first thing that you guys are probably figuring out is, so why is a submariner doing anything with unmanned systems that are flying? So let me tell you a little bit about Space Florida. So I have 3 lines of business. One is the vertical launch into space, one is a horizontal launch and recovery from space, and one is the unmanned systems. Space Florida, my boss is a guy named Frank DeBello, who we really don't understand where our bounds are. Right? We have two port functions. One is a business development function to grow the aerospace industry. The other one is what's called a spaceport authority, kind of like an airport authority. There's only one of those in Florida. So we look to be basically the mentors for all of space. And where I'm trying to go here is that any technology that transfers to or from space, we feel we can touch. So when you look in this industry, you're looking at control systems, you're looking at cybersecurity issues, you're looking at materials, you're looking at propulsion systems, energy systems, all those kind of things. And robotics has been a big portion of space. So to tell you how we got into that, that's how Space Florida stepped into this role. And I think my boss recognized that unmanned systems was the next revolution that was going to be here. Okay, and one of the early things that we did was to work with Lockheed Martin with the Marlin system, right, that's down toward West Palm, or down toward, I guess it's West Palm, right, and work with them to actually facilitate bringing that underwater system on board, right? Our metrics are the metrics of any business development organization: number of jobs, high-paying salaries, capital investment from the companies, right? Very important. So in 2012, when we stepped into that, Frank said, right, go find a way to do unmanned system stuff. The biggest thing I'll tell you, and I hope this changes very quickly, is there really wasn't an organization that stepped up for Florida, right, to try to take on the challenge of the FAA test site. And many of the people in this room have helped us, whether or not it's Rose, who defected to Virginia on us, right, or Brent, or the guys that are in the room. It's really been an honor to be able to work with people to do that. So you put up there that we are a legislatively chartered entity of Florida. We're not an agency, right, but we can take on liability and risk, and that's what we try to do. So on the operations side, we can do things that we don't. We look like government to government, and we look like commercial to commercial, and that's intentional, okay? And so as a result, we, over on the Space Coast, we are able to go look at unused property and different things and try to repurpose those for the technologies. So why robotics, right? The X-37 program is now in Florida completely from launch to recovery, completely autonomous system. Sierra Nevada is going to fly back a robotic system. SpaceX is now flying boosters back, right? They have one thing in common that we're trying to work on, and that's airspace. We consider airspace to be infrastructure. You can't do anything without it. You don't need a facility, but you need airspace. And for us to be successful, us being Florida, to be successful across those three lines of business, you have to manage airspace. You have to be able to manage it, control it, use it, coordinate it, shrink things so other people can use it, and do that. And that's how Space Florida really got into it, a necessity and the, if you will, the intersection of all three of those business lines to be able to do that. Okay, so one of the challenges we have is, I did say we're legislatively chartered. That means we do get an appropriation from the legislature every year, right? And that's a good thing, and that also means that we have a tremendous amount of scrutiny in what we do. So it's very interesting. It also means that we can work very well with all the different federal agencies as well as all the agencies that are here. You can find stuff on our website to go through and do, but quite frankly, we have some very unique venture capital guys that do a lot, right? I'm just the grunt guy that's trying to make the ops side work. So be more than happy to get you guys someone down to see a launch or do whatever. So what we looked at was, you can see a couple things kind of behind the slide. You'll see that the areas that we look at are all those systems, those pieces that transfer to and from a security aspect to those materials to the power. And really what we see is that power of the aerospace industry depicted by the EFI slide, most of those entities and those skill sets transfer to unmanned systems. The aerospace, right, leadership that Florida's had for years either dovetails with programs from the bigger contractors, right, or the spin-offs to go through and look at that. So really that's kind of where we're at. And our problem, or I think the whole challenge that everybody in this room would go is, you know, if you're not on the train's leaving the track, right? And our focus is a business development portion to enable. Okay? And I'm humbled because that's Space Florida's role. It's not, if you will, a savior or something like that. It's just to facilitate and find a role and back out of a role if we're not needed. And we're more than willing to do that. Right? You're going to see these slides, these numbers for a long time, right? And our job at Space Florida is to figure out how to optimize Florida in terms of getting our piece of the pie, or actually I don't want our piece of the pie, I want a bigger piece of the pie. I want a bigger piece of the pie. I think everybody in this room does, right? I am really, you know, we want all the space industry here too, right? So the question is, how do we go do this? And my approach may be a little bit different than some of the biz here, because I have to be a little broader, right? You've seen a bunch of these things. We use this information to be able to even get in conversation since 2012 as to why the systems were important, right? The privacy issue that was big in 2012 that caused us to put a code of conduct in as part of our preparations actually, in my humble opinion, saved me personally probably a lot from being in the line of fire with some interesting discussions from those folks who provided us resources. Sir, it's great to have you here. Great talking to you last night. So we've looked at that. Okay, we really have looked at how to go through and do that. It hasn't moved nearly as fast as we want, right? But we're still pushing on the track. So, you know, you guys are seeing the same things. There's nothing different. The big point is down at the bottom, is that how do you get access to airspace and proximity to the markets? And the question is, so what's the market? We would tell you that the market, the easiest market for Space Florida is to go through and get us to look at Florida, look at our agencies, look at the value to the state. And our push has been really to show the value of the technology to the state to counter all the wonderful photos that show armed drones, right? You know, and all you see, as a matter of fact, yesterday there was we were actually having at the reception, in the background there was a mysterious drone that appeared, and they showed it around the Eiffel Tower. That's all you could hear. We couldn't hear what they were discussing. So it's one of the big challenges that we have, and our focus has been to do things to be able to show the value of the technology, right, to get the good news story out there instead of letting other people tell the story. right? Again, our core strategy there, right? You'll hear me say, right, it has to be, right, to fit into the national airspace system, right? You got to have situational awareness, you got to have protocols, and you got to have, right, predictable behavior. That's the same thing we need from those platforms coming back from space. So that's what we've been pushing to go through and do. So, you know, again, there's nothing there. It's a safety first approach, right? We have a safety floor for what we do. We are still looking at being able to enable folks. I will tell you one of our biggest challenges is that you are probably looking at Space Florida's Unmanned Systems Division, right? Space Florida only has 36 employees, right? So as a leader, we're there to facilitate. And so I will apologize for not pushing this harder, but I have some other things that come in line. I did learn a lot about the FAA walking into the demo, right? And for those of you who don't know, I think you know, we actually, it was gracious enough to have 9 companies come along with us. Actually, I think 11, I should say, ASEC and ENSCO being the banner of airspace and safety, that stuck with us to a very challenging time that we didn't even know up until a couple days before whether or not we were going to have a demonstration. We actually did a preliminary one in February. Angel Eyes, Peoria, and Elevated Horizons were the 3 companies that go, all Florida companies. Really helped us iron out some process. For those of you who probably know, there are 2 federal partners over on the Space Coast. We chose that because we really couldn't get a COA to go through and do. So in all intents and purposes, we actually used restricted airspace to go do this event. I thought we were going to be able to do it commercially, but at the 11th hour, the companies were gracious enough to allow me to put them under a 90-day lease so I could take all responsibility for the event. Very interesting, right? We walked a very fine line with our focus. The focus was firefighting, it was emergency management, it was search and rescue, and it was precision agriculture, right? So, and we still fall by that we all understand that the words do matter and how you approach it and how you approach the game that's going on. It's exciting to see the FAA put some rules out for draft. But it's still going to be draft for another 2 years. So collectively, it's also exciting to see them come up with different ways to allow certain companies to fly, right? We're trying to figure out how to enable more companies. Again, one of the interesting things is just so you know that the FAA did monitor this event from start to finish. The team did a great job from a safety perspective. We actually had a car that ran through the barrier, or actually ran through past the security. Guys had to put it on the ground. Emery Riddle's here. Is Charlie here? Right? Very proud that Emery Riddle joined us. They had a hard landing on the pre-web day. The neatest thing was they found out what the problem was. They fixed it overnight. Right? We did basically another check on their systems, and we let them fly in the event, which was one of the things that the FAA commented on, that not many people would take that on to do that. But I think it's a tribute to the students at Emery Riddle to go through and do that. And it's kind of exciting to see that happen. So instead of throwing them out, we got them to fly. I should say the team got them to fly, it wasn't me. We had a critique at the end of this with the FAA, the Air Force, and all that. And the biggest complaint from my partners was I didn't give them enough time to go through their processes. And I'll apologize publicly for that. But if that's the only thing that you hit me on, I'm pretty good. I was asked if we would do a demonstration again, and I said, the quote was, "The wounds are deep and fresh." And the response to that was very interesting, was, "We don't want you to do that. We'd like you guys to continue to do demonstrations." Right? It's the only way to keep the work through this, right? I still don't know if it was an air show or not. We had a 500-foot setback from spectators. So all of the 20-pound UAVs that flew had the same setback as an F-18, right? Right? There's something that needs to be addressed there. But you know, it was a very interesting thing, and I really appreciate those who were part of that grant. AUVSI, right, in particular, a great partner. I'll also tell you that there's, you know, I'll touch on a little bit on the thing, a little bit of a leadership challenge in Florida. But I will tell you personally, I challenged Mike Toscano in 2012 when I told him AUVSI was not much of a player here in Florida. That's changed, right? That's changed a lot, and I think that's a very positive thing for the way things are going to go. And Grant and your team and Brent, right? John, I don't know all the officers. You guys have done a great job in rallying stuff, and those guys are the ones who have to continue to help, and they're the best source who can focus on things day in and day out, so thank you for that. Thank you also for prodding me, right, quite frequently so I can timeshare, right, and push those through, but I really appreciate that. Our focus for 2015, and I will be the first to apologize for not having the shuttle landing facility in my hands. The agreement is imminent. If I told you that the biggest issue we have right now is liability and indemnification, right? We have pushed back on the original document that wanted us to waive all liability for not only NASA, but for their contractors and subcontractors. That's not a commercial model. So I think we have a way ahead. I do think very shortly we'll have it, there'll be a ribbon cutting and I'll have it in our hands. But even that's a challenge from the standpoint. So what does that do? What that does is actually make us a partner with the Air Force and NASA for the airspace over there, okay? We've worked with Camp Landing. Quite honestly, we have an interpretation that kind of hinders our ability to be able to utilize Camp Landing the way we had hoped to. We'll work through that, right? It's just a phase that we're going to go through. I think the most positive things that you want is our initiative is the emergency management. You're seeing that the Department of Emergency Management, Brian Kuhn asked me to get UAVs into the hurricane exercise back in 2013 and 14. It's going to be partisan injection in 15, right? And not that it's right, not that it's a great thing, but to be able to do that is pretty exciting. So we're hoping to have some injects from off, right? Again, just to show, I don't know the complete scenario, but it's going to be exciting that the Department of Emergency Management is a big leader. The other thing that's happened is that the Florida Department of Transportation has stepped forward as the leader for autonomous systems. I think Ed Hutchinson's going to be here, I think during the event, but they actually had an autonomous vehicle summit here at Disney in December, right? Right. Unfortunately, we could not meet the risk management requirements for Disney to fly UAVs during that event, even if we put them in a cage. So, but we'll keep pushing. So I guess what I'm saying, I'm seeing Department of Transportation taking a lead, emergency management, agriculture, right? It's pretty exciting. Fish and wildlife, they all have a need as well as agriculture. They all recognize that they have some limitations or concerns from a risk perspective with regards to what they can and can't do. And I said that I thought that was a market. I still think that's a market for Florida companies, right? How do you have to go do that? That's going to create some interesting dialogue too. Is it a public or is it a commercial event, right? But that's going to be an exciting conversation to have. The summary, I think you guys know. Again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm going to tell you that Space Florida is in it for the long ride, right? We'll do what we can to help, right? To facilitate what you guys do for a living. That's what we do, right? I think it's incredible with what's going on. It's unimaginable. I mean, I was talking to Tom yesterday. I mean, you look at from the small UAVs to these big boosters coming back, and it's exciting to have partners, whether it's Amazon or Google, SpaceX, right, Blue Origin, that are flying boosters back. So how do you take a booster that's going 17,500 miles an hour, turn around on a dime, and at least hit the barge? Right, that's a tremendous thing, but that is a good thing for this industry. It's a tremendous thing for this industry. The challenge is, that I see, is how do you manage the airspace to allow all these things to play safely together? And collectively, the folks in this room, I think this is a great forum to get it started, right? I think that there's some great leadership. There's obviously some bills, Senator Richter, right, Representative Smith. It's exciting to see the Florida Department of Transportation step forward. It's exciting to see that the Commissioner of Agriculture step forward to ask to do different things. It's exciting to see the Director of Emergency Management ask to have the technology used. Those are things we didn't have 2 years ago, right? So it's moving, right? How fast we can do it is a matter of how fast we can influence the right people. And this is a great start, Grant. So with that, I'll close and we'll get on to the rest of the program. Thank you.